All right, so you're ready to go deep on Jennette McCurdy, huh? Well, buckle up, because we're diving into her memoir, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just your average Hollywood tell-all. It gets really real really fast.
Right. Like, she starts acting at 6 years old,
Well,
6X, and her mom is, well, she's really pushing this whole stardom thing.
you can see that from the very beginning. It's almost like from day one, you see this tension between the mom's ambition, and what Jeanette actually wants, or even just how comfortable she is.
Totally. And there's this one story that really highlights this about one of her first acting gigs, a bit part on The X-Files. Her mom is over the moon, even sneaking food from the set to take home, but Jeanette's like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Not a good time.
Yeah. Like imagine being 6 years old on a set like that, surrounded by adults and bright lights and expectations and everything.
Well, for sure. And it doesn't help that their family was struggling financially, like a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
they were relying on her grandparents, multiple jobs, just to keep afloat.
Right. And that adds this whole other layer to the story because now it's like, okay, so there's this pressure to succeed, right? But it's amplified because the family is depending on her income, at least in part. And she's a kid.
So much pressure. And even the home environment wasn't exactly stable. McCurdy describes it as incredibly cluttered, like almost unlivable. The garage was so full they could barely open the door, and they were all sleeping on mats in the living room because the bedrooms were packed with her mom's hoarded stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that paints a picture, doesn't it? And it goes beyond just being messy. A kid needs to feel safe and secure at home, and
Yeah.
this was chaos.
Yeah, and this is where the mom's control, and maybe manipulation is a better word, really comes into focus. She is controlling basically every single aspect of Jeanette's life. Her diet, how she looked, even her money, all under this guise of support and guidance.
Classic. It's like this textbook controlling behavior masked as care. By controlling all these little details, she was really preventing Jeanette from developing any sense of independence, of being her own person.
It's almost like she's trying to make Jeanette into this perfect little image she has in her head, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fly.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets really disturbing. Like, she showered with Jeanette until she was 16. 16.
And constantly policing her food, like from a really young age. No wonder she ended up with such a messed up relationship with food in her body.
It's so damaging. It just completely messes with a kid's sense of privacy, their own body, their own space. It impacts their ability to have healthy relationships, everything.
Makes you wonder how she even functioned. And then there's this whole thing about her developing these rituals.
Yeah.
Eye squinting, tongue folding, even butt cheek tightening. And she'd say it was the Holy Ghost making her do it.
Yeah.
But her grandfather thought it was OCD.
Could be a coping mechanism, right? Like she's in this environment where she has zero control, so she finds these little things she can control. Just a way to manage all that anxiety.
Who knows what was going on in her head? She even had this breakdown once where she was convinced her stuffed animals were going to kill her.
Whoa. I mean, that just shows you how intense the pressure and that whole environment was. Like a cry for help. It's all just too much.
It's a reminder that kids need healthy ways to deal with their emotions. A supportive environment is so important, especially when things are tough.
Absolutely. Kids can't always articulate what's going on, so they act out or they develop these coping mechanisms, and it's a sign that something is really wrong. It's a sign that adults need to pay attention. Really listen to what kids are trying to tell us. But let's talk about iCarly, her big break. It's kind of ironic how this dream come true, this stardom that her mom was so obsessed with, actually made things worse.
It's like that saying, be careful what you wish for, right? You'd think getting famous would make you happy, but for her, it was anxiety, self-doubt, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. It really shows you how different things can look on the outside. Like, just because someone seems successful, happy even, doesn't mean they're not struggling inside. And in her case, it's even worse because she has this pressure to be perfect, plus her mom's still pulling the strings.
And get this, her mom actually encouraged her eating disorders, like pushed her to lose weight even when doctors were like, hey, this is dangerous.
Seriously, it's like her mom's desire for Jeanette to succeed, or maybe it was more about the mom's own ambition. It just took over.
Yeah.
She wasn't just ignoring Jeanette's well-being, she was making it worse.
It's crazy, right? There's this story about how Jennette was told she was too pretty for a role, and her mom was happy. Can you believe that?
Wow. Yeah, that's messed up. Instead of being worried about her daughter being judged on her looks, she's happy because it fits with her own messed up vision of what Jeanette should be.
And the industry itself didn't help much either. Like, there's this thing about a flannel shirt compromise during an audition. Basically, they wanted her to dress more like a boy so they wouldn't have to drive her home so far.
Seriously. They were willing to make her uncomfortable, put her in a weird situation just to save themselves a little time. That's just wrong.
It's like they don't even see her as a person, just a cog in the machine. And the more famous she got, the more disillusioned she became. The fans, the constant catchphrases, it all started to feel gross, like she was trapped.
That makes sense. Fame can be really tough, especially when it happens so young. It's like you have no privacy and there's this pressure to always be on, and it can really mess with your head, especially if you never really wanted it in the first place.
Right. She even talks about this trip to Disneyland that they had to cut short because of the fans. It wasn't fun for her at all. It was just stressful.
It's a good reminder that fame isn't always what it's cracked up to be. And for her, it just added more stress to an already bad situation, especially with her mom.
Oh, yeah. Their relationship really went downhill as she got more famous. Jennette was getting frustrated with her mom's control, like even down to practicing autographs and coming up with slogans for merchandise.
That's gotta be tough. Like, she's craving independence, wanting control of her own life and career, but she's still stuck depending on her mom, both financially and emotionally. Talk about a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. And then there's the aftermath of her mom's death. It's this whole mix of emotions, and she realizes that even though her mom was sick, their relationship never really got better.
Grief is complicated, right? And when you add in abuse and control, it gets even more messy. Forgiveness and healing aren't always straightforward.
She even got a gift from her mom after moving into her own apartment for the first time, a weight loss DVD.
Wow. It's like that unhealthy obsession with her body just wouldn't go away even after her mom was gone.
It's really sad. But it's also around this time that she starts to take her life back, you know? She quits acting, starts going to therapy, and begins writing, like as a way to express herself.
Good for her. It takes a lot of guts to walk away from something that's so successful, to break free from that cycle. And therapy is so important, you know? It's a safe space to process all that stuff.
She even says in her book that the show robbed her of her youth. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, but it shows how much those experiences affected her. And it's great that she's able to articulate that, to take control of her story and tell it on her own terms.
It's inspiring, right? Like she's showing that we can break free from those situations that are hurting us, that we can build a life that we actually want.
Absolutely. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. She also talks about her struggles with bulimia and alcohol, you know, and how hard it is to break those cycles.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even people who seem like they have it all can be struggling with these really difficult things. And it's so important to talk about mental health, to get help when you need it.
For sure. And what's amazing is that even while she's dealing with all this, she finds this passion for writing and directing.
It's like she's taken all this pain and turned it into something positive, something creative. She's not just surviving, she's thriving.
Exactly. And you know what? Her book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, became a huge bestseller, like over 2 million copies.
Wow. It really struck a chord with people, huh? And that title, it's so powerful.
It's definitely provocative. Yeah, it's not your typical book title, that's for sure. But it really gets to the heart of her journey, you know, like breaking free from that control, finally being able to be herself. And the fact that it did so well, it shows you the power of being honest and vulnerable.
Totally. And she doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
She lays it all out there. And I think that's why people connect with it so strongly. It's like, wow, I'm not the only one who's dealt with this stuff.
Exactly. It normalizes talking about the tough things, you know, like eating disorders, addiction, the emotional scars that come from trauma.
It makes you realize that even people who seem like they have it all, the fame, the money, whatever, they can still be struggling with some serious stuff.
And it's not just a personal story, right? It brings to light the messed up stuff that goes on in the entertainment industry, especially when it comes to child actors.
Oh, yeah. Makes you wonder how many other kids have gone through something similar, you know? All that pressure, the lack of support, the potential for abuse.
It's a wake-up call, for sure. Like, we as viewers, we need to be more aware of what's going on behind the scenes.
We need to hold the industry accountable, make sure they're actually protecting these kids.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, Jennette's story is about hope, about resilience. It's about taking control of your life even when it feels like everything is stacked against you.
She's a fighter, that's for sure. And she's found this new passion for writing and directing. She's using her voice in a different way.
And she's inspiring others to do the same, to speak their truth, to break free from those toxic situations. It's pretty amazing.
It's a reminder that we all have the power to change our lives, to create something meaningful, even out of pain. So what do you think? What's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about after hearing all this?
I think it's about asking ourselves some tough questions, like what's our responsibility as viewers? Are we part of the problem? And what can we do to make things better, not just for child actors, but for anyone who's vulnerable or being exploited?
It's about speaking up, advocating for change, and creating a world where everyone feels safe and supported. And that's what Jennette's doing now, right? She's telling her story, she's helping others, and she's showing us that it's possible to heal, to grow, and to find happiness even after going through some really dark times.
Absolutely. It's a story that will stay with you, and hopefully it'll inspire you to take action to make a difference, even in a small way.
That's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive. We give you the information, we ask the tough questions, and we leave you with something to think about, something to act on. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better world.